Hey, this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva,
Yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
and you're listening and or watching the Snob West Show, where we talk all things Apple and then some. Welcome back to another week of our show, our web series, and our audio podcast. Thank you all for tuning in for another week. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's start with the lowdown, where we talk all things Apple. This week, we're going to start off with what you need to know on about Apple AirTags, and we are going to reference an article by none other than Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech. So let us know what we need to know about these AirTags from your personal
yeah,
usage.
so I like we mentioned on the show, I've had them for about a week now. I was able to find some El Cheapo key tags to hook them onto the keys. So I got a pair on my keys, and I'm eventually going to give a pair to my wife to where she can hook them onto her keys. And the story wasn't necessarily a here's how you set it up, here's how you rename it. It was more like here's the things you need to know, right? So some of the things I mentioned was the fact that there's no charging involved. Like the popular Tile devices, you need to charge them up. This one uses a regular, watch battery that needs to be replaced on average once a year. One of the things that I mentioned, some things you need to know is probably the main thing was, can you track people? Yes and no is kind of like the answer from based on, my, messing around with it and reading other people's, reviews or, what they've done so far. And the way it works is it's anonymous data. So, to an AirTag, my watch, my iPad, my MacBook, my anything else Apple, it won't know who those devices belong to, but it uses those devices to create, I'll do air quotes, a mesh network to where it can triangulate where it can find these devices. So while my AirTag, if I lose it and somebody picks it up, I won't know, oh, that's Nica's phone, she's 20 minutes away or whatever. It'll just triangulate and give a location back to me. But where it could kind of be used to track is, let's just say Nica needs to borrow my car, and I give her my keys to my car with the AirTag on it. She drives and run errands. She does whatever she needs to do, whatever the case may be. Since I know that I gave her my keys, I can track where you are going because I know I gave you my keys, right?
Right.
Now, the trick is supposed to be, so technically speaking, let's just say you were here and I slipped an AirTag into your purse or on your person or whatever. I can technically track you for up to 3 days. Unknowingly track you up to 3 days. After that third day, the AirTag will notice it hasn't been near me in 3 days. So then it'll omit a sound. And if you didn't know that you were being tracked, you're going to be like, what's that noise? And you're going to search around, dig in your purse, find my AirTag and say, oh, he must have, accidentally put this in my purse or whatever the case may be. You can call me. You can hold your phone up to the AirTag and see whose it belongs to, and you can give me a call and say, hey, did you mean to leave this in my purse? And that sort of thing. So technically speaking, if you know you gave your AirTag to somebody, whether they knew it or not, since you know who
you gave it to,
you could track that person. So that was kind of limited, right? But only for 3 days. So you couldn't, if you're trying to track your baby mama
or if you're trying to stalk somebody,
you would have to slip this on them, and whatever you're trying to do, it better be within three
Done within those
days.
3 days.
Right, right. So if you're gonna break windows or you're gonna hide in the bushes, get it done within those 3 days. That's just for now. I think you mentioned last time we talked about it. As this evolves, we're pretty much the guinea pigs trying this new technology out. As Apple watches and sees how people use them, they get the feedback, they'll adjust accordingly. So that 3 days may be cut down to one day, based on some other parameters, based on some other whatever case may be. So depending on how people use them, but I think the feedback from the community, the tech community, everybody's trying to figure out, can you track somebody? And that's kind of like the consensus of, yeah, if you give it to somebody or you put it on your kids to go to school, you can kind of track their throughout the day, what kind of locations they go to until it comes back to you. Once it comes back to you, then it resets.
It resets to 3 days.
Right,
Gotcha.
right. So that was pretty much the gist of my story. There was a couple other things, like, for instance, Android users, if they find an AirTag, they can hold it NFC up to via NFC. They can hold their Android device up to an AirTag. It'll pop up, this device has been lost. You can put a message that says, if found, please call this number, or whatever the case may be. So I thought that was pretty cool. And that was pretty much it. How, I kind of talked about how it is registered via your Apple ID. And if somebody just found an AirTag, they can't just say, oh, I'm going to erase the data off of this AirTag and use it as my own. It's registered to my Apple ID, similar to a phone, a tablet, a MacBook, to where, even though you were able to, erase the data off of an iPhone or an iPad, it's still registered to me. So you can't really use the full capacity. So the same thing goes for an AirTag. Sure, you can take it and move it around, but you can't assume responsibility or ownership of it, rather.
Right. Yeah. And I think those points, especially with the 3 days being away from home, quote unquote, home base, it gives that sound. I think those are safety precautions that when they were probably creating this, they thought through because people are going to be not great people, regardless of what the tech is, what its intent, where people can find other ways to manipulate and use technology for nefarious reasons.
Right.
So I think they built in what they could as far as its usage to try and mitigate some of that. So,
right.
So yeah. And I have to say, I got my mom AirTags for Mother's Day. And the setup was, of course, with any Apple device in the ecosystem, pretty seamless. The only issue we had was that she hadn't updated her phone. So we had to go through all of that before we could actually do the AirTags. But other than that, it took seconds.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's move into our next topic. And that is, I think we talked about this maybe either earlier this year or last year, as it related to Apple extending out different programs to the AUC, which is the Atlanta University Center here in Atlanta, that serves Clark Atlanta, Spelman College. Let me say the full name because I don't want my Clark people. Clark Atlanta University, Morehouse College, and Spelman College. And I think now that Morris Brown has been accredited again, they are, fully back in the fold. But what Apple has recently done is extended the Apple Developer Academy to Detroit and to Korea. They have two different programs, a 1-month program and a longer 1-year program. So essentially what they're doing is they're offering this program to people who would want to be iOS developers. It's free of charge to those who apply and get accepted. And Apple provides all the necessary technology that you need to participate in this program. I think the first Apple Developer Academy opened in Brazil in 2013. And from what I'm understanding, that with this program, Detroit is, the latest one, with the expectation of them expanding this plan out through more students and more locations each year. And so, again, I mentioned they have a 30-day program that is a foundational course. I'm reading from an article from 9 to 5 Mac. And the 30-day course is foundational information that covers topics including app development as a career path. And they also have a longer, more intensive program that's 10 to 12 months that dives deeper into coding and professional skills. What's being offered in Detroit is the 1-year program. We'll provide the link in the show notes because it's open to everyone, but Detroit residents get priority. You don't have to have any prior coding experience. All you need to be is 18 years or older. And from the article that we're reading, Apple outlines what they're looking for in an applicant, and it quotes, "We are looking for passionate and creative individuals with a variety of backgrounds, big ideas, and motivation to participate. You don't need to have a background in coding, design, or entrepreneurship to be a student in the Academy. Academy students are problem solvers who are not afraid of tackling the world's toughest challenges, are ready to learn, and want to make an impact." This particular program starts October 4th, 2021, and it ends on August 2nd, 2022. You need to be available 20 hours to participate. You can choose either mornings or afternoons, and it's being run in partnership with Michigan State University.
All right. Looks like I'm gonna need to figure out how to break into the Detroit real estate market so I can find some properties to rent out to some of these passionate and creative individuals with a variety of backgrounds, so on and so forth.
Right. And honestly, there are a lot of car companies that are based out of Michigan, particularly in the city of Detroit. So, on your real estate game, people will probably be moving there because it doesn't say how many students they accept in the program, but I'm sure that will equate to some job boom, hopefully in that area, and giving people a different path into tech. A lot of times we talk about it. The tech space is very much under the thumb of certain gatekeepers. They have all these different rules of how you can get into tech, what you need to do to get into tech. And I think this is just another way that's kind of breaking down some of those gates so that different types of people can come into the industry, because the more variety you have, not just in the tech space, but in any industry, it gives you, a better view. It gives you different ideas and different views from different people, and it makes your product better. So it's great for the city of Detroit. I know they're going through a bit of a revitalization. So definitely. And it says anybody can apply. It just gives priority to Detroit residents. So if you are interested, if that's something you may want to get into, I say go ahead and apply and, see how it works out. You may get lucky, especially if you don't live in the city of Detroit.
Right. And it's cheaper than going to college, and it's shorter than going to college. All you need is 20 hours of availability. So you could do this during the daytime and then go to an afternoon job, or vice versa. And it's done in partnership with Michigan State University. So Michigan State, even though you may not be getting a certificate or a degree that says Michigan State, it'll come from Apple. But the fact that you are using the same resources as Michigan State students should give you some extra cachet. So
and with Apple providing all the technology you need, you're working on the latest. They're probably giving folks, the new M1 MacBook. So whatever you need, they're providing it for you. So that's definitely, another barrier that some people face, not being able to afford a Mac to do, the iOS dev on. So I think it's a good look all around. So definitely, if you are interested, apply. We will put the link in the show notes, and we'll also pull out the application link just so it's easily accessible as well. All right, moving right along. So it looks like there is a new app out there that is specifically for Apple devices in the authentication space. I'm sure many of you, I know myself included, I primarily use Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator, but Too Stable has released their, and it's just simply called Authenticator, app that's, like I mentioned, designed specifically for Apple devices. And one of the big things is you don't have to, I know we've mentioned before, Terrance and I both use LastPass. You have this master password you kind of have to keep up with, because if you forget that, it's hard to recover all of your data that's stored in there, and you have to make sure you know where it is, have it in a safe place, or keep it memorized, or whatever the case may be. But with this Authenticator app, you don't have to create an account. You just have to, remember, the one password, and it syncs and backs up to all of your devices via iCloud. So if it's on one device, it's pretty much on all of them, because that's pretty much how the Apple ecosystem works. And it also mentions that you can import, it's possible to import your data from Google Authenticator into Two Stable's Authenticator. And one of the other things that the author mentions that they really like is how, you can copy something on, say, your iPhone, and then paste it into, if you have a MacBook, you can paste that content across devices. They said it in this article, he indicates that it works, pretty fast on this particular app. So that's something that they mentioned that was a great feature of the app. One of the other things I thought was interesting as well is that if you're on a Mac, you can scan the screen with the app to create a new account. So if you're creating something, you can easily scan the screen and it will import that information into the app. So that's something that I think is probably one of the neatest things, that you can just scan from the Mac, your screen, and it picks up and it adds that new account to your phone. It also has iOS 14 widget support. It also supports your biometric authentication, whether it be Touch ID or Face ID. All of the data is encrypted and stored on iCloud. It looks like a little bit further down, it indicates that it's working on getting some additional support, UTF support for the different browsers, Safari, Firefox, and Chrome extensions. What does it says? Secure account share and unlock with Apple Watch, as well as translation and localization in other languages. It doesn't have a web extension yet, but if you have at least one Apple device with you, you can enter the two-factor authentication code, even if you're offline, it appears. So, it seems like this may be a bit of a rival to two of the most popular authenticators that we are currently in the marketplace. The app is free to download, but you have to pay roughly a $10 yearly subscription to use the full force of the app. But if you use the free version, you can still add 2 accounts.
Yep, I'm surprised Apple doesn't have a two-factor authenticator app. You mentioned Google, you mentioned Microsoft. I use LastPass authenticator. I'm surprised that Apple, with their main huge emphasis on privacy, data security, things of that nature, that they would not offer a two-factor authenticator app to where you can. Now, of course, they do have two-factor authentication for their devices. So if I need to log into an iPhone, iPad, Mac, whatever the case may be, I got to go through two-factor authentication to get access. But like if I wanted to import, banks, social media, one of the things that I would strongly suggest you use two-factor authentication for is cryptocurrency. Because the last thing you want to do is one, lose access to your wallet with all that money you making, or two, have somebody else get a hold of your device and bleed your account dry, right?
Yep. Transfer it out.
So, yeah, I guess, yeah, like I said, I guess my question is, surprised Apple doesn't have one. Maybe this too stable. Apple will do their thing, buy them, and integrate that into iOS 15 that's coming out this year. Yeah. So that'd be interesting to see if Apple scoops them up or they come up with their own two-factor authentication service. Oh, I lost you.
Oh yeah, I was on mute. Yeah, someone was doing their alarm outside. But yeah, I'm probably gonna do a little research into it and see what it's all about to see if maybe this might be a little bit more easier to use than the other two authenticators that I use. So yeah. All right. The last thing that we have this week in the lowdown, we've talked about this this guy before. Apparently, the new MacBook Airs that I'm assuming will have the M2 chip likely. There have been some updates in possible design from notorious leaker John Prosser. I think we talked about him when it came to the Apple announcement. His original date was off a little bit, but prior to that, he was pretty current with his leaks. So essentially, with the new MacBook Airs, it looks like they're changing some of the design that is typically known for MacBook Airs. And the other biggest thing is that colors. In the spring loaded event, they announced that the new iMacs would come in 7 different colors. It looks as if the new MacBook Airs are going to have those same colors as well. John Prosser indicated that what they're basing these renders off of are reliable information for the blue version, as well as he claimed to have seen the green one as well. The biggest thing is that these are super thin. I guess I can share. They're supposed to be super thin. It's bringing back the white keyboard on the laptop. It's giving you, based on what I'm seeing on these images, is giving you a little bit of old school iBook as far as the curvature and like the keyboards and those type of things. Let me go ahead and
while you do that, I'll surmise. Duh. What I mean by that is it's not a stretch when Apple released this new iMac that just came out with all these pretty colors. It's not a stretch to say, oh, I bet the MacBook Airs will have similar colors as well. So let me go ahead and create these renders and throw these pretty colors on here for the tech blogosphere to run with it. So, like I said, I'm not John Prosser, he's doing his job to get clicks and links and likes and shares. But this is not a stretch. This is not, in my opinion, some, you're the first to leak this thing. So as a result, give me credibility. I mean, it's not that, it wouldn't be in a stretch to say the MacBook Pros will be the traditional space gray, silver, and then a MacBook Air will have all these pretty colors. Same way with an iMac. You got the iMac Pro, you've got the Mac Pro that's got the black and the silver, the traditional colors. And then you got the iMac with all the pretty colors. So this is not a stretch. I don't think they will abandon that thin clamshell design and go with a more square thing. I think they're going to stick with the differentiator between an Air and a
And a
MacBook Pro
MacBook. Right.
outside of the colors.
Right. And he did indicate that it's going to come with two USB-C ports, one on each side.
Mm-hmm.
He mentioned a built-in SD card, a built-in HDMI. But what I have to say is a little confusing to me is if he saw one,
He ain't seen
then
one.
some of the guesses that he's making sure to call out, because he said there is, I'm trying to find the statement where he said there is some guesswork that came into the render. But my thought when I was reading the article is like, if you saw it, then how much guesswork would you have to put into it as far as what he's talking about regarding ports, regarding shapes and colors?
Yeah, no. Um, I'm hard pressed to believe that they'll add SD cards, multiple, ports for the MacBook Air. It's going to have, it may add, a USB-C, on both sides, but that's about it. And then they're going to relegate all of the ports for the MacBook Pros because again, Apple needs a differentiation.
Between the two.
And right. And if they're going to look the same, have the same features, functionality, but just the colors will be different. I mean, what's to stop anybody from just getting a regular MacBook Air and that be the workhorse, especially with this M2 or whatever they call it, this new chip coming out? There'll be no difference
Yeah.
between that and the MacBook Pro. So, yeah, I don't buy this one.
Yeah, you have to definitely take it with a grain of salt because he says, quote, as far as I know, two USB-C ports, one on either side. But in the terms of I/O from the images that we had, especially the angles that we had, they mentioned MagSafe, but he's not sure.
Yeah, just throwing stuff at the wall to
Yeah.
get people to to pick up the story.
Yeah, because, like I said, when I was reading it, about halfway through, I was like, wait a minute. But where is the guesswork coming in when you got one? I could see if you got information only from a reliable source, then sure, you may have to do some guesswork. But if you're saying you saw one in person, I would assume you would at least get to kind of look around it to kind of get an idea of what it is. And one of the key points of the Air is streamlined. You don't have all of the extra stuff going on. This is kind of like your grab and go. You're in a hurry, you're quick, you don't need a lot. You just need to like maybe do some browsing or type up some things. You don't need any type of heavy duty processing. So yeah, I don't know. It leaves definitely some questions around this particular instance. All right, that is it for the lowdown. Let's jump into second string where we talk all other tech. Starting us off for second string this week, Twitter launched their tip jar. So now you can tip your favorite tweeters straight from the app. It works with PayPal and Venmo. I think Apple released this last week, and it started rolling it out to users. I don't have a tip jar. Maybe I'm not. I don't have enough followers for that. But to note, if you have this feature enabled, you just need to go to your own profile, and you will see a little icon with it looks like a dollar. It looks like a little currency like bill type of thing. You click on it, and it allows the user to link to their Venmo, Cash App, and other digital payment accounts in their bio. So when you go to tip a person, you can click on the tip and you can see what available mediums you can send cash to for a specific for a specific, if someone fires off a hot tweet that you are down for, you can easily tip them. I know when this first came out, it was a lot of there was one thing about, I think some people were doing tests with PayPal. It shows your address when you make a donation. But the folks over at PayPal, because Twitter said, hey, that's on PayPal, we can't really do anything about that. Then PayPal came back and said, hey, wait a minute. If you use the goods and services option, your address won't be seen. But if you use the
friends and family,
friends and family, then you get the you don't see the address. But if you use the other option, you will see the address, and that's primarily because when you think of people using PayPal for business, it's just another way to validate that this is
well, you need a receipt.
Yeah,
if you're doing business.
Yeah,
and a receipt is supposed to have business information on it.
Right, and it basically says, this is business, and we have to make sure that we have accountability for people who are sending money for goods and services, which is the business portion, and friends and family, which is the free version, and you don't send addresses. So all that to say, if you decide to tip somebody and they have PayPal, just be reminded that using friends and family option, you don't send your address, but if you use goods and services, your address will be sent. So thoughts on being able to tip folks via Twitter?
That makes sense. People, are helpful on Twitter, especially if you follow a certain person. They always give you news about, Bitcoin or news about tech, for example. If you're always reaching out to a certain person to, get information for, and you feel so inclined, it's a good move for people to be able to tip somebody on Twitter, since a lot of people go there for information, outside of YouTube. I don't think people go to Instagram or Facebook for like information. They may go to, find out what's going on.
Recommendations, maybe. I know people use recommendations a lot on Facebook, but
yeah, a lot of people go to Twitter to find out, what's the news.
That's the news source, honestly, for most people.
Right. So, if you do find yourself getting a steady stream of what you're looking for, from that person, then yeah, it makes sense for you to be able to tip them. It'd be interesting to see how Twitter monetizes this. Are they going to take a fee, or are they going to keep it, user oriented? This is I see this as a very user organic community of me deciding if and when and how much I want to tip somebody. And I can see if Twitter does try to get into it and try to broaden the platform and make it official and monitor everything and, regulate all of it. It'll kind of take some of the shine off of it. I appreciate what you did. Right. So, hopefully, if this works, they keep it kind of evergreen, keep it kind of minimal and basic, not get it all entwined, and a bunch of regulations and fees and
I see if they do go that route, I would think they would probably get in some kind of partnership with the actual vendor. So they could go to Cash App and say, hey, we added this tip jar and we now have, 50 million more being, used through this app. How about we cut some sort of deal? Anything that comes from Twitter, from our app that goes into you, maybe you give us a fee or a percentage or that kind of way. I could see them probably doing it more on the vendor side than actually taking directly from.
Which I'm surprised they didn't exclusively make it Cash App, because the Jack Dorsey, I think.
Oh, that's Square is his. Yeah.
Right. So I'm surprised they didn't front load it with Cash App and say, well, I guess you can do PayPal and Venmo as well. So I'm surprised that partnership that you just made, I'm surprised they already don't have that in place.
Probably because it's so new, they probably don't want to cut out anything. They probably want to get a baseline to see which service, people use most on these apps. Could be a little bit of coordination for Square to say, hey, we have a lot of people that use other services. Let's try and win their business. So I could definitely see why they started out with the traditional ones initially anyway. They can always roll things back, which they've been known to do. So they can start with, say, 3 or 4, and then, once they see how it works, say, yeah, we just want money to come into us. So we'll see how it plays out. But it literally just happened. What was it this week? Time is like, I don't even know what time is, but it's very recent, and it's just now starting to roll out to people on their accounts. So it's still full steam ahead, with getting it out to individuals. So yeah. So I thought that was very a interesting take from Twitter, because a lot of people always say, pay me for my wares, pay me for my thoughts, or people stealing, quotes and things from Twitter. So this way you can now make a little bit of money, different stream of income.
When you go viral, I've always seen now the routine I've seen on Twitter is you say something, do something, post something, share something, it goes viral. And when people who the original poster was, or the author, sees that it's going viral, the trend is they then backload that with, okay, well,
since you're here,
support this, or make sure you do this. So it could be another thing that they do. If you do go viral, you say, if you appreciated that, whatever it was,
tip me,
give me a tip.
Yep, cool. All right, let's move on and talk a little bit of Instagram. Something I saw when this first popped up, T-Pain, the rapper, Atlanta-based, he noticed on his Instagram that he had this folder with all of these messages, and not just any messages. He got messages from celebrities. He was just scrolling endlessly of people trying to collaborate and work with him. People like Viola Davis or Fergie or, Jamie Foxx, all these different people, reaching out to him, wanting to work together. And he basically ghosted them for like 2 years. I think some of the posts went back as far as 2 years. And he was like, I didn't even know this was here. It was funny watching his video about it, because he was truly like flabbergasted. Like, what is this even? So T-Pain, being the celebrity that he is, he was able to get on a live with none other than Mark Zuckerberg, who is, of course, the founder of Facebook and also the owner of Instagram as well. He got into an Instagram live session with him, and they were basically trying to walk through a way that makes it easier for people to see who has DM'd them. And, there was a conversation that went back and forth about how we can improve this, how we can make it better. But Mark Zuckerberg did, tell T-Pain why they created, the request feature the way they did. And he says, quote, "The reason we have the request feature is to prevent bullying and spam and other unwanted interactions, to be able to filter that out." So basically the reason they have this separate folder for direct messages is to help people not get spammed and any type of bullying. And so T-Pain's retort to that was, there are certain people, he was like, it's a good idea to have the folder, but there are just some people that, it needs to go directly to your direct feed. And Mark Zuckerberg agreed, saying, quote, "I kind of feel like on principle, anytime Rihanna sends you a message, it should go into your main inbox." So it's interesting how something as organic as, realizing the capability of a feature and the, I guess, privilege that T-Pain has to be able to pull in Mark Zuckerberg and have a conversation about it live is just another way to show how connected people are through social media.
Right. And it's a way to give them some good press.
Yeah, true. They've been getting it. They've been on the bad end of it for a while
recently. So to be able to curry some favor with, T-Pain and his audience. That's probably a positive. But I'll be honest, I don't know if T-Pain wants this smoke, right? Because I don't, there are a lot of requests that I get, and I'm just regular old me, right? Imagine if Mark Zuckerberg was able to, well, of course, not him directly, but Facebook via Instagram was a way to figure out how to notify you, you know, once a day, once a week, once a whatever the case may be, send you a newsletter. I don't know what they could do. If he missed 2 years worth of all these messages, imagine if he's starting to get inundated on a regular basis with all of these messages that Facebook or Instagram thinks you need to see. I could see them rolling out a feature, and then 2 weeks later, people up in arms.
Turn it off.
Turn it. I'm getting too many messages. It's burning up my battery. I don't have any memory left, and because of all these messages. So that's number one. Number two, from a business standpoint, all the people that I want to work with, or all the people who will want to work with me, I would think would find out a better way to find me than DMing me on a free social media platform. I can only speak for myself, but if I wanted to reach out to somebody directly, I'm going to figure out another way, you know.
Especially when you're this famous and this rich, with the people that were reaching out to him, you would think they would have another way to find contact to kind of connect the two.
Or do what most people do, when they post something publicly, respond to it, make sure you add that person and say, hey, can I reach out to you? Or can, not necessarily plug from a social media thing, but if I put a post and some people say, oh, I like that, we should collaborate, whatever, right, on the message, because people, we are vain. So we want to see how many likes, how many comments we get. So I don't know too many people who post something and just let it fly. They posted, and 5, 10, 20 minutes later, they're going back to check to see the
Who
comments.
responded? How many likes
Right.
they got?
So
Yeah.
if some regular person was just like, hey, I love your work, I would love to work together, you see that, and in your mind, you just scroll past that, but then you will stop at like you
A
mentioned in
blue
this,
check.
right, Jamie Foxx or Viola Davis mentioning something, hey, I love your work, would love to work together, let me message you, and then you exchange the numbers, the phone number, the email address, whatever the case may be, then you would do that business. I find it weird that all of these people, well, not weird. I find it odd that people in the industry, they have no other way to reach out to T-Pain than other in a DM,
Right.
it's a social media DM. I would think there'd be some sort of channel, or again, well, maybe that's just my
Publicist to publicist,
right.
or
Exactly.
two
Reach out to
degrees
your
of I mean,
publicist.
everybody in Atlanta is like 2 degrees of separation. So there has to be a common link. But I think what probably T-Pain was thinking is people who are verified, they should go straight to my main inbox. They shouldn't be off in Siberia. Send the nobodies, send the the unknowns over there. I don't really care about them. But I think based on what it seemed like from him, is like, if Viola Davis is reaching out to me, I want to see that early. So that's what it
I
sounds
bet
like to me.
I bet money. That sounds good, but then he would get these people. So to us, Viola Davis, Fergie, Jamie Foxx, these are big people. But to another big person, quote unquote, they're just regular people. So it sounds good, but I'm pretty sure that if this were to roll out, I guarantee he'd be like, oh, what do you want?
I'm sick of this. Leave me alone. Yeah.
Right. Leave
It'll
me
be
alone.
interesting. It's like one of those things where you don't realize how good you have it until you don't. So
Right.
now it seems like a good idea because he missed all of this engagement and working with all these people. Now that he's seen it 2 years after the fact. But
And it
if
could have
this
been a
is
bunch
real
of
time
fake.
coming in, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Do I want
Right.
this?
Right. Which and if you want to dig a little bit deeper, it could have been a bunch of fake. Ooh, I want to work with you, but I really don't want to work with you. but so let me just DM you, and if you see it, you see it. We can chat, but not really, because like I said, if I wanted to find T Pain to like really really work with him,
You
I
find
would
a
do
way.
more than a DM on Instagram. So maybe he was just name checking people in this post
Well, you
as
saw in
all
the
these.
video he was kind of scrolling and showing all the checks of
They could have
people.
just been like, "Yo, bro, I loved what you're doing. Keep up the good work. Let me know the next time you in town." Those type of messages,
Yeah.
right? Not some I again, my naivete is like, yeah, I don't think, Viola Davis is like, "Hey, I want you on my next film," in your Instagram DMs, right?
Now he did go into the studio with Jamie Foxx right after this, so
Well,
it's
yeah, I
some
mean, but
people that's willing to work.
I can
But the
imagine
thing
it.
is sifting
Right.
through all of that to see
Mhm.
what's real and what's just a little bit of fluff.
Right.
So yeah. Yeah. I'm starting to come around to your line of thinking. I think he probably doesn't really want this. I
It was
think
cool to say, and it makes sense.
if it's certain people, he probably wants it, but he doesn't want it all. He only
Right.
wants the top of the echelon people,
Bec-
not
Now,
everybody.
now, I will agree with him when he put out the original. Oh man, I didn't know this existed. There are a lot of people that didn't know this existed, because I can remember Facebook doing the other folder, right? And you go in there and you see all these messages from all these people. Oh man, I missed it. Oh man, I missed that person. But then it was just like oh man, I missed that.
And you kept
It
on
wasn't like there
scrolling.
was a golden opportunity in here that I missed because I wasn't checking my Facebook other folder. Yeah, I don't think that was the case. But
And
at the
there may
same
be
time,
some of those instances, but they're likely few and far in
he made
between.
it, he made it sound like he missed out on millions of dollars, and I don't think that was the case.
Yeah. Yeah, but I know some people are saying, man, I hope he does. After he posted the Jamie Foxx video, a lot of people are like, man, he should start like a IG reel or IG series or whatever, documenting when he actually does meet with some of these people that he got these messages from. So if you
That'd be a
think of it that
nice
way,
little.
that'd be a
That'd be
little cute little something.
that would, but then again, like I said, I'm pretty sure those people was like, yeah, I really didn't want to work with you like that. I
Plus, that was
just
2 years ago, and I moved on to something else.
right, exactly.
All right. I want to say I think you may have added something else in here that we can talk about.
Oh yeah, LG,
LG.
the everything maker. They make refrigerators, they make televisions, but they were most known for making their phones back in the day when the smartphone wars was taking off before Apple and Android kind of or Apple and Google rather shut everything down to where they are kind of like the high end, smartphone makers. LG has been out there forever. But I'm kind of, a little bit sad to see that they have decided that they're going to close their mobile phone doors and they're going to just focus on things like vehicle components, connected devices, smart homes, robotics, artificial intelligence, and business to business solutions, as well as platforms and services. So I think it's kind of sad to see the number three player. Like I said, they weren't no slouches. They were number three at the time of this announcement, that they're going to decide to stop making smartphones. So I just thought that was interesting to note that, LG was pretty much hanging in there. All these different names that, they had. LG, like I said, starting to go away. HTC kind of fell off. Zomni is a big one. They just got U.S. kind of said, okay, y'all can come back and sell phones in the United States, because that was that big thing during Trump's administration that, anything coming out of China was bad. So, Zomni is a big smartphone maker. They just started to get the green light back in the United States. But, for a while it was LG, HTC, um, maybe Google and their own devices, and Samsung, of course. So Samsung, LG, and HTC were the three big Android makers. And to see Samsung, of course, rise to the top, HTC fall off, and now LG fall off, I think it's kind of sad day in smartphone mobile world to see a big name like that kind of fall off. So I just wanted to highlight that, because I've had an LG phone and they were pretty good. But I guess they were like, yeah, we'll move on and move to this Internet of Things and connect everything else like refrigerators and smart homes, things that.
Yeah, and especially if they're getting into the EV game, they probably realize that the smartphone arena is, oversaturated. Even though they were one of the big players, they probably see the tide turning and probably are willing to say, let's, invest more on this electric vehicle stuff, the smart home stuff, and, let's take that money we were investing in the phones and push into these and maybe see a big return. So it'll be interesting to see, how it plays out for them, especially since they were in the top 3. I didn't realize they were in the top 3 of sales. I did not know and would not have known. So another one goes on to mobile device heaven and leave it up for the other ones to kind of scrap it out.
Yep.
All right. The last thing that I wanted to cover this week in Second String, it's been all over the news. It's been one of the biggest hot topics, especially here in Georgia. Colonial Pipeline was hacked. They are one of the biggest pipelines that transport fuel to different gas stations and companies as well. They daily, prior to the hack, were moving about 100 million gallons of gas per day. They covered, I think, a 5,000-mile span from Texas up through New Jersey. And they are based here in Atlanta. One of our Patreons, Zandy, who's a friend of mine, she actually texted me on Saturday and said, hey, this huge fuel pipeline got hacked. You may want to go and fill up on gas just to be safe. Fortunately, I was out running errands on Saturday, and before I came home, I did fill up. I was going to put it off because I was going to leave that next morning, going to my parents, but I was like, it'll probably be early when I leave. So since I'm out, I might as well go ahead and get the gas now and hop on the road, which I'm glad that I did. But what happened is, it's been all over the news, everyone's talking about it, but a cyber attack happened with Colonial Pipeline. And they are the most high-profile victim of the hacking group called DarkSide. So this group, they consider themselves a RAS, meaning ransomware as a service. So it doesn't appear that they work on their own behalf. They work on the behalf of others. So they provide a service to other people who want to extract information from certain individuals. So this isn't just your run-of-the-mill, somebody found a random exploit. This is a service that DarkSide is providing.
And it's not they had an axe to grind. I think that's the important thing. When you say ransomware as a service, they don't have any particular, skin in the game. They're not specifically targeting anybody to overthrow or take down an entire government.
Strictly money, strictly service-based. So there's no altruistic motive behind what they're doing. It's strictly for money on behalf of their customers.
Now the customers may have an axe to grind,
right?
But they said, my name is Bennett, and I
ain't in it. You're paying me for a service. I am going to provide that service. But all of this happened, like I mentioned, over the weekend, and it really has thrown, everything into a bit of a tailspin. From my understanding, Colonial Pipeline is still offline. They are working in a very limited capacity. They haven't announced yet what the exploit was and how they got into their system. But what I think overall this says is we've now entered into a new phase as it relates to as it relates to cyber attacks. It's no longer, as you mentioned, something altruistic or something with someone who has a personal vendetta. This is a service. And I think that maybe that this aspect of it is something that may be being lost in the conversation. You hear cyber attack, you hear ransomware, most people immediately think of that in a more traditional sense, not necessarily as a business model. And that's pretty much what I'm gaining from the article that we are referencing. Forbes. It's a very detailed article that goes into how DarkSide works, some other people that they have gone after, and how they operate as a whole. I've been trying to find what the ransom demand was. I haven't been able to find it, but they're saying that for DarkSide users, the ransom demand ranges anywhere between 200,000 and 2 million. So I guess it'll be interesting to see what the ultimate, if they even say what the ultimate amount of the ransom that they were requesting to get their services back.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get it. I think, this is too important to the United States.
It's infrastructure.
Right. So I don't think they're probably outside of the notoriety, which probably in and of itself is probably currency. They're
getting business from that.
Anything from this particular hack, but outside of, like I mentioned, just to show that it can be done, and it shows that there are holes in, like you mentioned, our infrastructure. So not to toot my own horn, but I was a year late, but I did, as one of our tech predictions, mention in 2020 that they were going to have a major cyber attack. Of course, I was a year late, but I'll give you, Corona kind of slowed everything down. So I'm toot my own horn and say I
told you so.
It was coming. I figured it was coming. That the way to take down, just to attack, the United States in general, was to hit, our infrastructure, or hit our, whether it be physical infrastructure like this, or the internet. If somebody were to figure out how to take down the internet in the United States,
buddy,
things would cease
chaos.
To exist. So I'm not to say glad, but silver lining. What this is doing is kind of revealing that there are some holes, some gaping holes that people can get into that could cause long-lasting, influential, issues, cause influential damage and collateral, to United States infrastructure. So it'll be interesting to see where things go from there. But we're probably already going to talk about it in, for the culture.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that people are, losing it, already.
Right.
And it's just, not just that, the ripple effect, It's not just not being able to get gas for our own cars, but being able to ship products, because airplanes, all of these packages that we order on a daily basis. All that's going to be affected if this goes longer. But I'm just surprised. The news, of course, I just shake my head. When they first started to break it, they were like, this just in, news, the pipeline has been damaged. It's stopping all this oil from getting to Texas all the way up to the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
But don't panic, though. Don't panic. But we want to tell you all this crazy stuff is going on.
And we have all the Chirons and everything's flashing and blinking.
Everything, but don't panic, though.
It's all good. And I think also what this underscores is the timing of this. President Biden has an infrastructure package right now waiting for Congress to take action. And people were, before, when it was first, I think it's like 1.6 trillion or something, and they were like, well, why we don't, this makes no sense. It's all this fat, it's all this extra thing. It's like a Democrat's socialist, dream wish. What do we need infrastructure changes for? The infrastructure just fine. Before this even happened, we knew that wasn't true. But what this does is it highlights it. It's a big red arrow pointing down to infrastructure. And the Biden administration could say, hey, we tried to told you. We have something in place. Let's just roll into it. And like you mentioned, if our power grid was to go down, internet were to go down, it doesn't have to be, another September 11th type event to, really cause issues. That's what, it's been almost 20 years now, 2021. So it'll be 20 years this year since the attack on September 11th happened. Now, unfortunately, folks have gotten sleeker, smarter, wiser. They don't have to have traditional and tremendous cause of life to affect our way of life. It could be something as simple as, like you said, taking down our internet, or in this case, causing a gas shortage for a company that pipelines over 100 millions of gallons of gas a day. It not just only touches individual people who are trying to get gas to go somewhere, which they shouldn't be going anywhere anyway, because we are in the middle of a pandemic. But nonetheless, that it speaks to that as well. So I will say, we'll just go ahead and roll into For the Culture, and it piggybacks off this last conversation. In the wake of all of this, especially here in Georgia, people are hoarding gas. There are lines around the blocks. People are being stupid enough. I saw this one video on Twitter. This lady was putting gas in grocery store bags and trying to put it in her car. And as she moves, it's plastic. It was just dripping through. I mean, as soon as she filled up, it would just drip out. People had all of these gas tanks. Like this one couple had like 15 gas tanks. They were just, gas cans. They were just filling up and stuffing in the car. First of all, there's no need to hoard all this. You're causing the shortage rather than the actual shortage from the pipeline breach. And it's just stupid. You're riding around with gallons and gallons of gas, flammable gas in your back seat, in your trunk, in a vehicle that's already easily flammable because it's filled with gas itself. So my question is two-part. I kind of gave my opinion already. The pipeline hack itself, do you think that's causing the gas shortage, or just people just being ridiculous, similar to what happened at the beginning of the pandemic, getting out all the paper, like toilet paper, whatever?
It's not causing it now, because again, this happened over the weekend,
Friday, I think.
Right. It's not causing it's not causing a shortage now, but it is definitely causing a panic. And what people are doing right now, either panic for panic safe because of my livelihood, or panic for as in let me figure out how I can turn this into an opportunity. Either way you want to see it, it's definitely causing a panic, because like I mentioned earlier in the news, they kept stressing, okay, well, don't panic because there's still enough gas for this and that and the other. And, this is where we're trying to highlight the importance of this attack, but don't panic. But every single day, all day long, all you heard is about this oil shortage on all the TV stations. So, of course, people are going to be like, oh, this is important because they keep talking about it, and it's almost like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. You have to stress the importance because this is the new, cyber warfare. This is how, like we mentioned, our digital infrastructure is probably the most important currency value we have. And for somebody to, crack into that, that could be a big issue. So they have to stress the importance. But, of course, that people just took that and ran with it. Now, everybody's panicking because of one, FOMO,
Mm-hmm.
that whole fear of missing out. So, I'm personally not panicked yet because, like I said, one, like you mentioned, we aren't going anywhere, so we've got enough gas to keep the car in the garage where it is anyway.
Yeah, like when I got back home, I filled up before I left. I drove to my parents, and before I got back on the road to come home, I topped it back off, and that was maybe another $10. So when I got home Sunday night, my original thought was to stop and put the 10 or so that I'd driven out back in, and I didn't. I was like, I ought to be fine. But I'm like, I got three quarters to half a tank of gas. That's fine because I don't plan on going anywhere. And if I do, it'll be within my little area. But what one of my friends did mention today when we were talking about it on our group text is the ripple effect. So now all these people are hoarding gas, the folks who need gas for a living, and people who say drive for Uber, who do Uber Eats, Instacart, those folks may not necessarily be able to get out and do their job. So that impacts them, and it also impacts people because if you're not one to go out, you can't necessarily get your groceries delivered or your supplies delivered. Now you got to go out, hoard up all the toilet paper again, hoard up all the canned foods again, and then really like doomsday people, I gotta restock my things in case the whole thing just kind of goes to hell.
Right, right. So yeah, we're definitely not helping the news and the media, and we are causing a panic, which directly is leading to the shortage. But to answer your question, I think we have some time, and I think this is important enough to where the government, step in, whether it be NSA, FBI, whomever, to either A, find out who is responsible, and B, kind of help this company out. Hopefully, they're helping this Colonial pipeline company out because, according to them, they're dead in the water. So,
They've been shut. They've been offline since probably Friday, Saturday.
yeah. So I'm assuming, other agencies, whether they be private or federal agencies, will step in and help them out. But, silver lining, like you mentioned, with Biden's infrastructure plan and all the money he wants to invest, just in general, looking back over the past, 3 years of all the stories we've talked about where this company's been hacked, this information has been leaked, this data has been put on the dark web, and this company has known they've been breached for 3 years, and they're just now telling us, now all that stuff starts to make sense to where, oh, this is a serious enough issue to where we really need to start to be proactive instead of just figuring out how to do damage control in the aftermath, because something like this major infrastructure going down, you can't be running around trying to, make people feel better about the fact that there's no gas,
And
right?
trying to figure it out on the fly without any type
Right.
of real plan,
Right.
in place. So it'll be interesting to see how much longer this goes on, because I personally think for this dark side group, they've probably gotten themselves more money, with just giving, the world a look into what they can do. They probably have people hitting them up left and right now for their services after seeing, what they can do. That's not good, but at the same time, it still is out there. And like I said, I don't think that they'll get anything from this other than the publicity and probably the additional people trying to, reach out to them to get some work. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much longer they can sustain being offline and how quickly they can figure out, how they got in and figure out what they had access to before they can actually get back online. So So yeah, should be pretty interesting. So I have one other thing in for the culture. I don't know. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I kind of watched it, off and on, let it play in the background for the most part.
And what we're talking about is the Mother's Day versus between Escape and SWV, two extremely popular 90s R&B female groups that went head to head over the weekend. The pre-show, they had pretty much two DJs representing each one. Escape is based and from Atlanta. All the girls in the group are 4 girls. SWV, 3 girls. They are from New York. So
I thought they were. I didn't know that.
I didn't realize they were from New York either until I Googled it, because they kept shouting out, Spinderella kept shouting out New York.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And DJ A1 was representing Atlanta. Spinderella of Salt and Pepper was the DJ for SWV. Before it got started, they kind of did some sets back and forth, going back and forth with some classic hip hop and R&B songs from their respective cities. That was fun. I saw a lot of people talking bad about it, saying the transitions were bad and all that kind of stuff. I really didn't get that, because I was just enjoying the music, especially from, old ATL. I mean, I'm from Georgia, went to college in Atlanta, so I was pretty much just enjoying the music.
Well, the verses before that was Redman and Method Man, and they put on a show.
Yeah.
So, then for that to kind of not digress, but go back to the people just sitting around chilling, I think people were kind of maybe, taken aback by that. And SWV and Escape were performers, so they eventually got around.
The first half, it was very
it was kind of
slow,
late, and then everybody was kind of reluctant, and some people would get up and then they would go back and sit down. So it was kind of like we're just sitting around listening to music, and they were telling a little bit of stories. It just wasn't as energetic. It definitely was not as energetic as the verses prior to that. Now, had SWV and Escape came out before Redman and Method Man, they probably wouldn't have nearly had all of those comments, but the fact that everybody was hype, and then it was kind of like, but then at the end, like I mentioned, they kind of stepped it up. So
so for me, I was excited about it, and then after I saw the first half, I left after the intermission. And I had some friends who were still talking about it. We were talking about it in the group chat. And I'm like, I left. And it was like, oh, no, you may want to hop back in. It's picked back up. They're dancing. They were like, SWV got out of their super tight clothes and their heels and put on kicks and hoodies. And when they came back up
like that in the first place,
I don't know. Because I was like, because I don't think Escape didn't change, but SWV did. And I think before Escape, they got up and they did like a little routine to one of their songs. They was dancing. They did like a whole little 1-2 step kind of coordinated thing. In the second half, when SWV came out more comfortable and laid back, and honestly, in more of what they were known for when they were, heavily out in the game, they loosened up and, were more fun, and you could see their personalities. But one thing we didn't know is, because I know everybody was like, for me, I was like, this seems really forced. The interaction between the two groups seems really forced. The interactions within the group, the separate groups, seem forced. I was like, this just feels really off. Well, the reason it was off was apparently when Coco, who I would say is the singer of SWV, the lead singer of SWV, she led most of the songs. She said as she was leaving her hotel to come to the verses, someone was murdered outside of her hotel. She heard the gunshots. She looked out the window and she saw the lady laying on the pavement, bleeding, dying.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And so she said that really messed her up. And she said if it wasn't for her son and her team that were there, she probably wouldn't have made it, because she was traumatized. And so after hearing that, I was like, oh, that makes sense as to why you weren't up to have a kiki good time at the verses.
Again, I've never seen anybody or been in that sort of situation, but I will say that as Versus has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, it's more of a production. And if it's going to be more of a production, then people are going to
Expect a production.
expect a expect a production. And what I mean by that is, with SWV and Escape, they got all dolled up, right?
And the mics were on.
And so, but I don't think everybody can do the Beyonce to where you're dressed all up and have all the makeup on, have the outfit, and have the big heels, and do the whole song and dance, right? So,
Especially since they haven't been performing in a long time. The stamina is not quite there.
Well, not just that. A lot of the women versus has been, for the most part, kind of just we sit down, we chill, kind of diva. We look back and reflect, because if you think of Monica and Brandy, they really wasn't all,
they sat in chairs and they sang songs. And
you think of Keisha Cole and Ashanti, they wasn't all rah 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 rah. You think of Patti LaBelle and
Gladys Knight.
They wasn't what they stood up and sung, but that was about it. Versus the men, you think of Snoop and DMX. You think of like I mentioned, Redman and Method Man. You think of who's the Atlanta rappers? Gucci Mane
and Jeezy.
They, more, it was more interactive, and I would wish, which is why I said,
why they didn't come out in sneakers and hoodies in the first place.
Right. Because that would have been entertaining for them to come out in sneakers and hoodies and dance around comfortable. Right. I just thought it was kind of weird that, it's like this whole, we got to be, stoic and beautiful and, relax. This is supposed to be
fun,
evergreen. It's supposed to be fun. It ain't supposed to be all this pressure. But
back in the day when we were listening to this music, we actually went to the clubs comfortable and danced and had a good time.
Right. So, but I like I said, I think it's kind of weird that the bigger of a production is, I feel like more glammed up you got to be. And I think it's kind of taken away from the organic nature of Versus. So, like I said, I enjoyed the Redman and Method Man because they put on the show.
They were themselves.
And they were themselves, and it wasn't, it wasn't even a typical rapper concert, because most of the rapper concerts are just as boring because there's 50 million people up there standing around.
Yeah.
That's whack anyway. So, for
give me a show, give me theatrics.
Right, or just for them to be having fun.
Yeah,
right.
But I think,
go ahead. Outside of the inside information with Coco, with what she went through, eventually they kind of warmed up, but
it took the second half of the show to warm up. And if you were like me, you left, because I was like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And at the same time, the bigger they make these things, because the stage they were on was huge, there was so much space in between them. In some of the previous verses, like Brandy and Monica, they were kind of like right beside each other. Gladys Knight and Patti LaBelle were really close to each other. The more elaborate these stages are, because this versus had Doritos as a sponsor and Ciroc as a sponsor, and they kept plugging those throughout the show. So it felt more like a quote unquote professional show. So when you are giving me sponsorships, you're giving me stage, you're giving me outfits, I'm expecting to see a show. I'm expecting to be entertained in a certain way. Whereas if you would have came out, even if you would have kept kind of like your glam, you can be glam and not be, heels and
stuffy,
super tight clothes that you can't really move in. And if the stage was more intimate, then that would have, I think, brought a different feel to it. But to me, until like the end, it felt very forced, from, the interaction between the groups and intergroups, between the DJs in the back, the shouting out of the Doritos moment. I was like, that's never happened in Versus before. the
So
Doritos
again,
moment
it's
where you picked
getting
the song and then they kept shouting out Doritos the whole time. It just was a different vibe.
yeah, versus is definitely getting big,
And it's
and they
about
better
making
be
money now.
careful because it may get a little bit too big and people start to tune out
Yep.
because it is a big production. Keep it light, keep it fun. Let them.
Reminisce, let us have,
Uh-huh.
our escapes from, no pun intended, from, the hellscape that we are currently in with all these
Hmm.
different things going on. A lot of times, especially in case like this, I think this is why Versus really picked up before. It's because it was simple in nature. It took us
Right.
back to a different time where we, a lot of us were younger, we felt freer, we didn't have all the extra pressures. And, I think that's one of the things that made it so great. But now when you make it this big ordeal, then it changes the mood around it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure what the next one is, but we'll see if they learn from this one and, maybe step it back down, or if they're just going to keep the foot on the gas and continue to go full throttle with all of the promotion and theatrics and production. So
Right.
guess only time will tell. All right, let's head on over to the hookup. What do you have for us this week?
Nothing really. I was just proud of myself because I fixed my gaming controller. Really, really no major point outside of don't be so quick to buy new equipment if your things break. There's this whole right to repair story or movement out now to where uh, federal agencies, the government is starting to put pressure on hardware manufacturers, electronics. You think of the iPhone, for example, prime example. Apple has long been like, yeah, we don't want y'all opening up the iPhone to fix it or changing up because one, you may mess with the experience or whatever their reasons are, right? There's starting to be a pushback from the industry to make this whole right to repair movement to where companies like Apple are going to have to either a make it more accessible for people to once I buy the product, I should be able to go in and choose if I want to fix it, if I want to improve it, upgrade it, or whatever the case may be. This right to repair movement says, well, why am I paying, Apple $1,200 for a phone to where if something goes wrong with it, I'm at the I'm at the mercy of this company when I could very well take it apart, fix it myself. So all that to say, around the world, don't feel in such a hurry to where if something goes wrong, you may be able to tinker with it and able to repair it. Like I said, in this case, one of the buttons wasn't working on my joystick. And instead of just throwing it in trash and going to get another one, I actually took some time, got some old tools out and was able to fix my stuff. So I was pretty proud of that. So that was my point. The hookup for this week is, if you've got an old gadget or something laying around or something that you use on a daily basis, you may be surprised that you can actually get in there and fix it. So that's my hookup for the week. Fix your own stuff.
Cool. And I have to say, the same thing happened with my Magic Mouse. It kept dropping connection. I just popped open, I did some Googles, popped open the back, put some aluminum in there to make the contacts right up on it on the battery.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't had any problems since.
Yep.
All right. That is it for this week. Definitely make sure to download, rate, and review us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. You can definitely hit us up on the social medias. We're at Snob OS Cast everywhere. That's on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Also, definitely be sure to check us out on YouTube. We're at Snob OS Cast. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel to get all the notifications when we drop a new episode. Also, feel free to leave us any comments or suggestions or thoughts on the show at snoboscast.com, which is our website, or you can shoot us over an email at snoboscast@gmail.com. Finally, there are 2 ways you can support our show. You can support our show via Patreon by going to patreon.com/snobwestcast. And for $5 a month, you get access to our pre-show content, which is our Snobbish show. You also get access to same-day live show taping, as well as access to our chat community. Also, the second way you can show support for our show is to drop us off a love offering over at PayPal. You can do that by going to paypal.me/snobos. And that is it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you all next week.
Peace.
Bye.